Greetings, everyone. We're going to go ahead and look at the top 5 missed questions from the US Canada Mexico unit test we took a week ago. So let's go ahead and look at it. So we're going to start off with question 2. So let's read it. In the excerpt, the United States Constitution is supporting the notion of which type of government? So from my question, I'm looking at the excerpt for the US Constitution and this idea of which type of government. So now let's read the excerpt. It says, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity." U.S. Constitution from 1787. So now our job is to look at our answer choices and, of course, figure out the correct one. Keep in mind, answer choice A does have that Constitution, so that's something we're looking for. But when it says monarchy, that's a king or queen. And you have to think, do we have a king or queen here in the United States? Of course, no. So that's why A is not going to be our option. Now, when we look at our second answer choice, okay, we have to go ahead and see what anarchy is. Okay, so again, this idea that there is no government system, so that will not be our answer. When we look at answer choice C, we want to think of what democracy means, and that is this idea of voting. We are able to vote here in the United States, of course, if you're a citizen, but the idea is that we have a form of democracy. So that's possible, our answer, but let's double check with the last choice. Absolute means total control. And monarchy, again, is king or queen. We don't have that king or queen in power, so therefore this one will not be our answer choice. And the only answer that we are able to choose that makes sense is going to be C, democracy. Now let's look at question number 3. So when we look at question number 3, it says the list above supports the idea that. And now let's look at the list. So we have Greek democracy that came first in 600 BC Greece, Roman Republic, 509 BC in Rome, the Magna Carta in England, the English Bill of Rights again in England, and then, of course, the Declaration of Independence in the United States. So a couple of things to look at within this list. Of course, we see Greece, Rome, England, and then finally the United States. These are, of course, different countries, and ultimately they had influences within their societies. So keep in mind, our 4 answer choices do talk about limited government. So now we have to think about how these answers are either true or false. So the first thing for answer choice A, it says it started in Greece. That's true based off of what we see here. Greece is first. However, it failed to spread to other places. That's not true. Because we see it in other countries, that answer choice A is not going to work for us. Let's look at answer choice B. It says never existed until 1689. That's not the case because there are several things, to be exact, that came before it. So that's not our option. When we look at C, it says spread to different countries. That's true because Greece, Rome, England, United States. And then ultimately, it impacted their societies. So those 2 things look like we've got a winner. But let's look at the last one. Contained the continent of Europe. That is false because the United States is not a part of Europe. So our only answer that matches is going to be answer choice C. Let's go ahead and look at our next question, which is going to be number 4. What we're looking here is economy. So we're trying to think out of the 4 economies we've talked about, which one is given the characteristics. One thing I will say is that many of you might not know, but a free market economy is also known as a free enterprise. Okay, so enterprise. And a lot of time this year, we refer to it as enterprise, and sometimes your teacher might have mentioned that it was free market. Okay, so keeping that in mind, when we think of free market, we think of supply and demand. We think producers, consumers, and government has little to no intervention. When we look at socialist, there is a mixture between the government and private citizens. Communist is the idea of total control for the government, and traditional is going to be passed down from generation to generation. So now let's look at our characteristics. Producers have supply and demand, okay, or in this instance, it says supply. The opportunity to make a profit drives people to put money at risk. So we want to make profit. And then, of course, consumers have the demand. Okay, so we see supply demand, we see producers, consumers. So we should automatically think free enterprise, not the idea that the government controls, not passed down from generation to generation. Um, and so this idea A was our answer. Now we're going to look at question number 8. So when we're looking at question number 8, we notice the spread of Roman Catholic religion throughout North America was a result of what? So we're looking at these percentages within these countries as far as the population being Roman Catholic. So in Canada, 39% of the population is practicing this religion. The United States is 20%, and of course Mexico with 82.7%. So now we have to figure out how did this religion spread? So when we look at our options, okay, we're noticing the achievements of Native Americans, okay? Native Americans, unfortunately, did not bring Catholicism to the Americas. They had their own traditions, so that's not going to be it. Vacations to and from Eastern Europe is not going to be it either, because again, when Europeans came to the Americas, they were exploring, they were colonizing, and so when we look here, our answer choice is going to be D and not this idea of crossing the land bridge. Okay, so what we have here is European exploration was a big factor. Finally, we're going to look at question number 9, and it's the having to deal with the popularity of Day of the Dead in the United States as an example. Okay, so we have to figure out what is being shown here. So keep in mind as we read this article that we're looking for how is it popular or why? What is this an example of? So we wanted to see that the Day of the Dead was celebrated in Mexico, and then we look farther into the paragraphs. It says over the last few years, a growing number of people in Mexico and other Latin American descents have celebrated Day of the Dead. The idea that people are moving, so migration, when we move, they're bringing their culture with them, they're spreading their traditions, their food, language, and so on. So when we look at those two things, we should automatically think cultural diffusion because the whole idea with cultural diffusion is the spreading of culture. The other answers do have cultural in front of them, but we did not mention any of these. We really focused on cultural diffusion. Okay, so when we look at Day of the Dead, we are noticing that the tradition came from these Latin American countries and came up to the United States through, of course, people moving and immigrating. Okay, all right. Hopefully, you are feeling good that you possibly answered some of these correct. If you did, pat yourself on the back. But ultimately, these were the top 5 missed from our last test. Have a good day, everyone.